a big moment because it's a left victory in a Democratic primary in a swing state, one that voted for Trump multiple times and has a top-tier competitive Senate race. So they're setting themselves up for a real test of the theory of whether this kind of candidate can appeal in the general election. I think, the party will come together, but it is a test of, is there a bias for non-moderate candidates in a swing state? Is there a bias for candidates that haven't previously held elected office? And is there a bias against Muslim candidates? All three of those have showed up in some research, and we get kind of a live test of it today. Michigan is going to be very central. It didn't necessarily look that way a year ago because you would have thought, if Democrats had any chance to win control of the Senate, Michigan was going to have to be crossed off the list pretty early, and then they would have to go to reach states. But candidates do matter, and so it could be the case that it certainly is the case that Michigan's moved up the list of Senate races, and that Republicans will believe that they can and should win in Michigan. And so that's, to some extent, a self-fulfilling prophecy because it means there's going to be a lot of money and organizing spent on Michigan. Well, it's definitely not their preferred choice. I would say that El-Sayed is way more prepared than other left candidates. That is, he sort of has started pivoting early, making sure that to have it known that he's not a socialist, that he is a capitalist who wants reform, that he's reaching out to people who are in the DSA just as much as he's reaching out to people who are Trump voters, and that, he wants to assemble as broad of a coalition as possible. He's not, changing a whole bunch of policy positions, but he also isn't portraying himself as a candidate of the left. So he's ready for that. There also are fears that a Muslim candidate will still face a bias from voters, and there is research to support that. And so they've already gone out of their way to start dealing with that. They have an ad where his grandparents talk about where is El-Sayed from? People keep asking us. He's from right here, and talking about him growing up in Michigan. So the campaign is prepared to make that transition, but the Democratic Party as a whole is going to have to go along with this plan that wasn't theirs. Another consideration, though, is that the general election is now going to have a lot more money. Republicans are going to see this as a real pickup opportunity, and they're not going to believe any polls that show that El-Sayed, is ahead if they do show that. So you're going to have spending here till the end on both sides pretty big. So. Abdul didn't like the money spent against him in the primary, and unfortunately for him, he'll have to get used to that because it's coming in the general as well. It could carry over because you're going to have you probably will have spending again from related interests. You're going to have certainly Abdul has already been making comments that Mike Rogers is supported by AIPAC, so you're going to have that same distinction made by both the Democrats and the Republicans. It has been a problem for the Democrats in 2024, for example. Harris obviously lost substantial ground in Muslim areas. She also lost ground in the most Jewish areas in Michigan. So they sort of couldn't have it either way. And that, is an ongoing issue for Democrats and for Republicans because they're facing an unpopular war in Iran. So it's not at all clear that this will cut in favor of the Republicans this time.